Hi everyone, my name is Linh Tran. I'm a PhD in linguistics at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Today I'm going to talk about the topic, what do we teach? A case study of Vietnamese University EFL teachers. This study was conducted with the aim to provide insights into Vietnamese teacher motivation for English language teaching at the higher education level through the lens of self-determination theory. The following areas were examined within the study. First of all, is the types of motivation for teaching English at the higher education level in Vietnamese universities. Second of all is the extent to which teachers' basic psychological needs are met by teaching. And then the study examined relationships between types of teacher motivation for English language teachings and the satisfaction of their basic psychological needs. And finally, the study will identify the usefulness or application of self-determination theory in examining Vietnamese University EFL teachers' motivation. So I will start my presentation today with a brief review of the self-determination theory. This is a major theory of human motivation and behavior developed by Edward D.C. and Richard Ryan for over 40 years. This theory has been widely applied in various domains, for example, education, healthcare, work, psychotherapy, sport, and virtual world. The theory posits that human is innately active and curious to learn, develop, and gain mastery of the knowledge as reflected in the tendency toward intrinsic motivation. In another word, it means that intrinsic motivation is inherent inside every individual. Within the self-determination theory, there are three types of motivation. Is a motivation, extrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation. These motivations are arranged in a continuum from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. The types of motivation on the left-hand side is less autonomous or less self-determined. And the one on the right-hand side is the one that the most autonomous and more self-determined in comparison to the left-hand side. So we will start with the first type of motivation is a motivation, or in other words, is a no motivation at all. People who possess this type of motivation, they have no energy and they have no tendencies and they do not really enjoy the behavior. In other words, they're forced to do so and they are supposed to quit the behavior as soon as they can. And then the next type of motivation is extrinsic motivation. This type of motivation is categorized into three sub-types of motivation, and they are external regulation, introspective regulation, and identified regulation. Extrinsic motivation refers to the types of motivation that when people engage in an action for the external factors or motivation, for example, reward, money, and avoid punishment or avoid feeling shame of not engaging in action rather than from the internal pleasure or enjoyment from inside. And regarding to the internal enjoyment or pleasure inside, we will go to the intrinsic motivation, the most autonomous or self-determined motivation within the self-determination theory. Intrinsic motivation can be categorized into intrinsic motivation for knowledge, intrinsic motivation for accomplishment, and intrinsic motivation for stimulation. For example, people who obtains intrinsic motivation for knowledge because they love to explore the knowledge. They love to learn new things. That's why this kind of love and curiosity push or encourage and motivate them to engage into the action to satisfy their curiosity, satisfy their needs, to make them feel happy when they can achieve they can gain the knowledge. Why intrinsic motivation for accomplishment and stimulation, because people just love to have a stimulated feeling, or just want to complete or accomplish something and can enjoy the result of their action. Apart from three types of motivation, self-determination theory also includes the basic psychological needs theory. This is one of the 6 mini theories of self-determination theory. According to this theory, people, apart from three types of motivation, like a motivation, extrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation, we also have the psychological needs, including the competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Competence refer to the need to feel effective in interacting with social environment, feeling of learning something new, feeling of mastering the new skill or their skill. And the next types of needs is need for autonomy. In another word, it refers to the volitional and experience freedom of choice and action. It means that people will to achieve or to feel autonomous. When an individual engages in an action, is necessary for that individual to make their choice, to decide, to make a decision whether or not they want to engage in the behavior. If they are forced or they are asked or required to do the action rather than they feel like they want to do, it means that they are not autonomous at all. And the last type of basic psychological needs is relatedness. These needs refer to the feeling of care, being careful, and then interacting with and respecting with people around. And when these three basic psychological needs are satisfied, people will feel more intrinsically motivated. In other words, the satisfaction of three basic psychological needs play an important role in improving the intrinsic motivation. So from the theory, from the literature review of self-determination theory, I suggest a definition to examine teacher motivation for this current study like that. Teachers' motivation refers to the internal and external forces that drive teachers to choose and take a specific action. Motivation will determine the effort, attitudes, and persistence that teachers attach to the action. However, its strengths may be reinforced or thwarted by environmental condition. So the environmental condition or contextual condition can improve or thwart intrinsic motivation by the satisfaction or dissatisfaction of basic psychological needs for autonomy, for competence, and for relatedness. So in other words, when teachers engage in the teaching environment and they feel like their basic psychological needs are satisfied, they will be more intrinsically motivated. That's how this is a way self-determination theory explains how the environment impact motivation. And this study will answer the following research question. First is what types of motivation for English language teachings are reported by Vietnamese University EFL teachers. Second, to what extent are teachers' basic psychological needs for competence, for autonomy, and for relatedness met by teaching? And finally, can teachers' motivation for English language teaching be linked to the satisfaction of the basic psychological needs? To answer these research questions, the study use the quantitative methods with the 3 instruments to collect data. The first one is the English language teaching motivation skills. This survey was developed by Noens and his college in 2000. And then, first of all, this scale was developed to measure student motivation for English language learning rather than for English language teachings. However, the author of this study decided to modify the scale because this scale was was developed based on self-determination theory. That's why the author decided to modify, to apply, and then modify these skills, and then rename it into English language teaching motivation scale to measure the teacher's motivation for English language teachings at the higher education level in Vietnam. These scales includes 14 items with 5 subscales, including the A motivation, external regulation, introjected regulation, and identify regulation. And finally is the intrinsic motivation. However, after the EFA, the factor analysis, exploratory factor analysis, only 3 subskills are identified. They are external regulation, introjected regulation, and intrinsic motivation instead of 5 at the original scale. And the next scales is work value scales. This scale includes 20 items and categorized into 3 subscales, including need for autonomy, need for competence, and need for relatedness. And this scale was developed by Kazasby and her college, and it was used to measure, to examine the strength of teachers' basic psychological needs in the current study. And the final scales is basic psychological needs scale as well. These scales also includes 20 items and were divided into 3 subscales: the satisfaction of need for autonomy, the satisfaction of need for competence, and the satisfaction of need for relatedness. And it was used to examine the extent to which teachers' basic psychological needs are met by teaching, or to what extent teachers perceived their needs are satisfied by teaching. For the data collection process, first of all, the author applied for human ethics approval from the University of Newcastle, Australia, to conduct the study and within the provided and the proposed instrument and research methodologies. After receiving the ethics approval from the Human Committee of the University of Newcastle, the author contacted the dean and head of department or school of English of the participating university to seek permission to collect data and to conduct research at their studies. And among those contacting university, there are 14 universities agreed to participate in this current study. And then the author contact EFL teachers by email published on the university website, and these email including invitation email, participation information sheet, and link of the online survey. Here a brief review of the participant demographic. The majority of the participants in the current studies are female, and there are 104 teachers respond to the surveys of the current study, and their age range between 20 to over 51. Among those, nearly half of those teachers are ranged between 31 and 40. And then the next majority group is the 20 to 30. The majorities of the teachers in the current study have the teaching title as lecturer. Only one teacher was teaching assistant at the time they participated in the current study, and 10 senior lecturer and 8 visiting lecturer. The majority of the teachers in the current study hold a master degree for their teaching, and just a minor number of teachers have bachelor or doctoral degrees. Teachers' experience in English language teaching range between 1 year to more than 40 years, and the majority group are 6 to 10 years and 11 to 20 years. So this is the finding of the current study. For this, this is the descriptive statistic for the English language teaching motivation scale. It can be seen from this that teachers in the current study reported a relatively high, but not too high, relatively high level of intrinsic motivation, a low level of introjected regulation, and low level of external regulation for English language teachings. And then teacher report that regarding the need, teacher basic psychological needs, the study found that teacher have report a high level of need for autonomy and a similar high level of need for relatedness, but still lower than autonomy. And the lowest one is the need for competence, with only 5.6 for the mean. In other words, teacher needs for autonomy rank at the highest level, and then is the need for relatedness, and finally is the need for competence. And this is the finding for the teacher's basic psychological needs satisfaction, or in other words, to what extent teachers feel that their needs are satisfied, that they have their need satisfied or met by teaching. So the study found that teacher reported a high level of satisfaction for their need for relatedness with 5.7, and then a little bit lower level for the satisfaction of need for competence. And finally, teacher need for satisfaction of need for autonomy was relatively low, just 4.6. To answer the questions, so to answer the question, to what extent teachers' basic psychological needs are met by teaching, the author ran a Wilcoxon's site rank test to compare teachers' basic psychological needs and their need satisfaction. And the study found that there's it can be seen from here that there's a significant difference between the teacher need for autonomy and the satisfaction of their need for autonomy, between need for competence and the satisfaction of their need for competence, and between teacher need for relatedness and the satisfaction of the need for relatedness. It can be seen here that the different pronounced large for the need for autonomy, and it's mean that, in another word, it's mean that there's a large gap between teacher need for autonomy and the extent to which their autonomy are satisfied by teaching. And this is the comparison of teachers' basic psychological needs and need satisfaction. It can be seen here that teacher has a strong need for autonomy. However, the column on the left-hand side is the strengths of teachers' basic psychological needs, and then the column with the light lighter colors, either satisfaction, the reported satisfaction of teacher basic psychological needs at work. It can be seen that there exists from the figure here that there exists a big gap between teacher needs for autonomy and the extent they feel that their autonomy are satisfied. However, this gap is pronounced less when it's come to need for related needs. It can be seen that only a small gap identified here, or to what extent that teacher experience or teacher need for related need nearly fulfilled by teaching, while their need for autonomy were not fulfilled or were not met by their teaching experience. To answer the questions, to what extent can teacher motivation link to the satisfaction of teacher, the satisfaction of teachers' basic psychological needs? The author ran the correlation matrix, the correlation test, to identify whether there exists a relationship between types of motivation and teacher basic psychological needs. And then the study found that teachers' intrinsic motivation positively and significantly correlated with the satisfaction of teacher needs for autonomy, for teacher needs for competence, and for the satisfaction of teacher need for relatedness. Even only low correlation identified, but it's still significant. In other words, it can be conclude that teacher satisfaction of their need for autonomy, for competence, and for relatedness will link to their intrinsic motivation, or will impact their intrinsic motivation. However, causality can be not identified here. So from the finding, this is the summary of the finding in the current study. Teachers in the current study reported a relatively high level of intrinsic motivation and moderate level of introjected regulation and external regulation for English language teachings. And teachers reported relatively high levels of their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And finally, teachers reported relative high level of the satisfaction of their need for relatedness, but moderate level of the satisfaction of their needs for autonomy and competence. And teachers' needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness were not fully met by teachings. There were gaps between the strengths of teachers' basic psychological needs and the extent to which the needs were satisfied by teaching. And finally, teachers who perceived their need for autonomy, competence, and related needs were met by teaching reported higher level of intrinsic motivation for EFL teaching than those who perceived that their needs were not met by teaching. From this finding, the study, the author come to the following implementation. First of all, the study suggests that self-determination is a useful framework to examine EFL teacher motivation. Findings of the current study support self-determination theory that basic psychological needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness are universal needs that play a key role to the intrinsic motivation. And then from this finding, the study suggests that more attention should be paid to the importance of EFL teachers' motivation, psychological needs, and well-being, because when we can improve teachers' experience of needs satisfied, it means that teachers' intrinsic motivation and commitment for teaching will be improved. And then teachers should be provided with needs supportive environment to enhance their motivation for EFL teachings. And to do so, to improve the satisfaction of teacher basic psychological needs, is it necessary to spend more effort to understand what make teachers feel that their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness satisfied at work. In other words, it will require more effort and energy to identify what make teachers feel that their needs can be satisfied with the support from the administrator as well from the school leader. That's all for my presentation today. Thank you so much for your listening and welcome all the questions and discussion follow. Feel free to email me for further discussion. Thank you.